Hey guys, so Lord here, back again with another review. Today we'll be taking a look at the Mattel Masterverse New Eternia Barbarian Skeletor. Now before we get into it here, let us first take a look-see at both the front and the back of the packaging. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now before we get into the meat and taters of this review, Barbarian Skeletor does come with a plethora of accessories. First up, Barbarian Skeletor comes with 4 interchangeable hands, the first of which is this pair of grip hands, albeit with a trigger finger question mark on the right side, but I guess if that bugs you enough, you could always heat it up and warp it into place. The second of which is this singular right fist hand and left open / relaxed hand, or as I like to call it, the turn your head and cough hand. Oh yeah! And as I said in my Viking He-Man review the other day, it seems kind of weird that the anchor characters like He-Man, Skeletor, and Teela get the shaft when it comes to these alternate hands. Again, let me know what you guys think of that in the comments below. Next up, Barbarian Skeletor comes with 2 interchangeable head sculpts, the first of which is this more Barbarian-esque head sculpt, because, well, duh. But if I'm being completely honest here, I think this looks a little bit more like a knight's helmet than a barbarian helmet, but to each their own. Second of which is this more classic-inspired head sculpt, and don't get me wrong, I love this look for Skeletor. I think I'm going to go with the more Barbarian-esque look, at least when it comes to this figure anyways, because I have plenty of Skeletors in my collection that already look like this. That said though, I like this head so much that I gotta find a use for it somewhere, so there's that, I guess. And last but certainly not least, Barbarian Skeletor does come with his king-sized Havoc staff, and I mean that both figuratively and literally. That thing is freaking massive. And a new weapon for the character, the Scimitar of Chaos, which, if I'm not mistaken, after reading the bio on the back of the package, can resurrect the dead? That's a little Evil Dead / Army of Darkness for your Motu lore there. Should also be worth noting that the Scimitar of Chaos can sheathe on the back of Barbarian Skeletor's armor there. So with that being said, let's now move on to the aesthetic and articulation. Taking a closer look at Barbarian Skeletor here. Now I'm actually going to take this cape chest plate thing off in just a minute here, but if you have his trusty Scimitar of Chaos handy, you can actually sheath it in the back and use it to hold this piece down, because it does have a tendency to kind of flop around. A little bit cumbersome to work with, but there you go. Again, not a perfect fix for this, but it is what it is. Then, should the Scimitar of Chaos be the Scimitar of Havoc? Because that's Skeletor's whole deal. Then again, he does have the Havoc staff, so, you know, Havoc and Chaos. I don't know. Curious about that, but taking this thing off. Looks cool, but I almost kind of prefer him without it. Just look at how badass this thing looks. This Skeletor ain't getting cucked out by nobody, especially not by some OP-ass Evil Lyn. Sorry, not sorry, but that bitch got on my nerves. That's a Revelation reference for those of you paying attention. But much like I said in the Viking He-Man video I did the other day, check it out if you haven't already. As much as I love my Motu Classics Skelly, don't get it twisted, love that figure. This guy kicks the shit out of it. I mean, it just does. He's got little creatures hidden throughout his armor and stuff, which I love. That looks awesome. Very 2000X, like with these shin guards here. All they're missing is a little red jewel right there on the kneecap. That said, the boot cut's a little loose on the side for me. Speaking of a little loose, I feel like this hand got loose on me too. It wasn't this loose before, but somehow is now. And I think that's really what Mattel needs to work on with this line is these hands are just too damn loose sometimes. Same with these calf cuts. It's just like, it's got tight points, but none of them are in neutral. So, it's whatever. So if I had any gripes with this figure, it's really just QC on mine. Other than that, he's aces. He's gangbusters. He is awesome. The feet are a little weird too. I wish they were just kind of flat. This would be easier to stand, but without all the extra stuff, he is pretty easy to stand. Look at that head sculpt for a minute there. If that's not inspired by Demo Man, I don't know what is. He's got the freaking beard, for crying out loud. He even has the little kind of crest detail that Demo Man had on his crown. A little. It's not exact. I think his was more square shaped, while this is more of a point. But really cool looking figure. Of course, has this kind of knight helmet with the more Middle Eastern inspired attire with the shin guards, and I'd even say this here, you could almost argue, is almost more gladiator-like. Then, of course, his traditional Skeletor armor. Unlike the Viking He-Man, his armor is actually easier to pop off on the back here. And there's the little holster for the Scimitar of Chaos. Give you an idea what that looks like on the back again. There you go. It's pretty good. That said, as I said before in accessories, you are going to want to heat the hands up to put the weapons in them, just so you don't risk stressing or breaking anything. Hashtag don't break your toys. I don't know why they keep giving Skeletor pointy fingers, but you know, you could have him be a die He-Man and shoot a laser from his hand. Excuse me, or a lightning bolt or a fireball or something. That said, though, if you have a heat gun, you could probably just warp that down. You can have a little bit of a better grip on the Havoc staff, because it is king-sized. I mean, bring that thing out again. That thing's freaking huge. But I digress. So as far as articulation goes on this guy, his head will rotate. Look up and down. Looks like the Viking He-Man. Does pop off pretty easy. Again, I gotta give Mattel all the credit in the world. They're making the heads easier to swap. We just need the wrist pegs a little bit tighter on these figures. This one's fine for me, but this one is Flopadopolis, and I just don't remember it being that way. Shoulders go out to the side, go back down, forward and back, bicep swivel, double joint at the elbow. Works really well. This guy also feels a little thinner than the He-Man figure, which makes sense. You know, I'm not opposed to that. I would like a super jacked Skeletor, though. If we can get a Skeletor on the same buck as Viking He-Man, that would be pretty cool, but I do like Skeletor being just a little bit thinner than He-Man, because if you remember 2000X, he was pretty agile in that series, and he wasn't quite as bulky. That said, his wrists do have hinge and swivel. Not the right hinge, but a hinge nonetheless. That was my wrist. His torso can crunch that far forward, that far back, tilt side to side. Got waist rotation. Hips. He's got a little bit better hip movement than He-Man. His loincloth piece is a lot softer than his. You can kick out to the side, you can kick forward, you can kick back just a tiny bit. He's got a thigh cut, double joint at the knee. Which, not too tight on this guy, but tight enough. He does have a boot cut. Now this isn't the tightest thing in the world, but it's acceptable. This is just kind of loose in a certain area. Does have a hinge in the foot, which that's kind of not as tight as I remember it either. As well as a rocker and peg holes at the bottom of the feet for the McFarlane stand, which does work on these guys. Worked quite well. A little bit looser on Viking He-Man and Barbarian Skeletor, to tell you the truth, but it's better than nothing. So getting this cape back on. Just has these 2 tabs on each side, and all you do is slip it over his head and kind of just rests there. And really, if you got 2 of these, or if you're okay with not being able to take this off ever again. Could just super glue this damn thing on here. Son of a bitch just has a tendency to pop off and, well, quite frankly, drive your boy nuts. So, it is what it is. I think I got it on there pretty good. But, yeah, what a cool looking figure, man. This guy in Viking He-Man, as much as I love Trapjaw, I gotta tell you, they're just doing something for me. Much like the Haunt and Soul Crusher from the Spawn line, who should be out either before or after I get these new Eternia guys up. Well, actually, Soul Crusher's been out for a while now, but Haunt should be going up relatively soon if he hasn't already. So, with that being said, let us now move on and take a look at some size comparisons. First up here is Barbarian Skeletor next to his Motu Origins counterpart, complete with the vintage-inspired head, and his Motu Classics counterpart, complete with some of the loosest ankles of all time, but again, best Motu figure line, right? Next up, here he is alongside his Motu Revelation counterparts, the standard release Skeletor and deluxe release Skelegod, who, like the Motu Classic Skeletor, also has super loose ankles. Starting to notice a pattern here with Skeletor figures. And last, but certainly not least, we have our two regulars, the Mythic Legion's Brother Mandibulus, beloved Spawn, as usual, towers over everyone, but much like the Viking He-Man I took a look at the other day, I think Barbarian Skeletor is more than a match for good old Al Simmons here. So with that being said, time to wrap things up. Some final thoughts. Overall, and as I said in my Viking He-Man review from the other day, please check that out if you haven't already, I absolutely love this figure, and this is, once again, by far one of, if not my favorite figure of good old Boneface in my entire Motu collection. Granted, he is not without his flaws. Unlike the Viking He-Man, this figure is a little bit more cumbersome to work with the king-size Havoc staff, the floppy cape that has a tendency to pop off unless you prop it on there with the scimitar like I do, and he's also a little bit trickier to stand. That said, this figure still looks tough. You wouldn't screw with this guy, would ya? Don't kid yourself, you know you wouldn't, because he would kick the shit out of you. Look at this Skeletor. Does this Skeletor look like he's going to be cucked out by anyone soon? I don't think so. So again, if you're at all interested in picking up some Masterverse figures for your Motu collection, and you passed on the Revelation stuff because, well, one reason or another, I guess, then you need to get on board with this new Eternia series. Again, I think it's going to add the spice to spruce things up with this Masterverse line that it's needed since its conception. I mean, let's be real here. I love the Revelation series, but it's nice to have something different, you know? So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you're so inclined, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know whenever I upload more reviews like this one. If you haven't already, please hit me up on Instagram at Overlord Productions. But as always, keep your comments civil. The world sucks enough as it is, especially when your king-size Havoc staff's constantly bringing you down. I mean, that's just a bad day, man. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later.